Okay. Thank you for having me. I am Danielle Farrell. I'm a public educator at the Alzheimer's Society of Peel. I love the name Unity for Community. Who chose this? I love it. It's got to be the best community name I've heard yet. It's so catchy. Okay. So I was asked to do an overview of dementia. And what I thought I would do today is, because the questions I get asked a lot by senior groups and by people in the general public is, what is a normal part of aging and what isn't? What should we be concerned about and what should we just go, okay, that's all right, that's a normal part of aging, right? So we're gonna go over what's normal, what's not. And we're going to also look at if you suspect that you or somebody else is experiencing some symptoms, what are the next steps that you would take, okay? So the warning signs. How do we know if somebody is starting to develop dementia? So the first thing I'm going to start with is a definition of dementia. Let's start with that. Okay, how many people have heard the word dementia? Okay. How many people have heard the word Alzheimer's disease? Okay, that's a lot of people, good. How many people know what those two things have in common? Memory, I heard here at the front. Okay. Old age. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So here's an interesting fact. If someone has Alzheimer's disease, they have dementia. Okay? But they can have dementia and have it not be Alzheimer's disease. Okay? So there are about 60 different diseases of the brain that fall under the heading dementia. Okay? So any brain disease is really considered dementia. Alzheimer's is just one of those diseases. It's just the one that we all have heard of. Okay? So old age was mentioned. So the majority of people who develop these brain diseases are seniors. Okay? But the youngest person I met with dementia was 32 years of age. Okay? So it is a myth that you have to be a senior. Young people can develop diseases of the brain and it be considered dementia. But the risk factor really goes up at the age of 85. So once you hit age 65, your chances of developing one of these brain diseases is 1 in 11. When you get to age 85, your chances go to 1 in 4. So at 85, we see a significant change in the amount of people developing dementia. So age is certainly a factor, but even young people can get dementia because you could have a stroke and end up with vascular dementia, and strokes can happen at any age, right? How many people know someone who had a stroke before 65? Exactly, yeah. Exactly. So it doesn't have to be over 65, okay? Now, how do we know what is a normal part of aging? Because when we are aging, our brain does go through some normal age-related change. And a lot of people, once they hit 65, they start to really worry about memory, right? They forget little things and then they start to go, uh-oh, is that a problem? Should I be worried? Okay. So, memory loss that affects day-to-day is not normal, okay? But there are some memory things that are normal. So, you go into the kitchen, you open the fridge or a cupboard and you stand there and you go, I don't know what I came in here for, but I knew 2 minutes ago, right? Anybody had that happen to them? Everybody? Okay, yes. That is a normal part of aging, okay? That starts to happen a little bit more as we get older. That's normal, okay? Usually what happens is you go, oh, forget it, and you leave the room, and you no sooner get out of the room and then you remember what you came there for, okay? This is also a normal part of aging when it comes to memory. So if my husband said, Danielle, calls me at lunchtime, he says, Danielle, we're out of milk on your way home, please pick up some milk. And I say, okay, right? Then I go do a whole bunch of other things and I forget about the milk. When I walk in the door and I see him, before he even says, where's the milk, I'm like, oh, the milk, right? Normal part of aging. But if he says to me, Danielle, where's the milk? And I said, what milk? And he says, I called you, I asked you bring home the milk. And I say, no, you didn't. And I don't remember the phone call, even with him reminding me. That would not be a normal part of aging, okay? So, you know, if I went out this morning to pick up some groceries, went to the grocery store, and I come back and later on someone says, what did you do this morning? And I can't remember that I went to the grocery store, that would not be a normal part of aging, okay? Now, if you run into somebody you haven't seen in 15, 20 years, and you think, I know that face, I know that face, right? But you can't come up with a name. Has that happened to anybody here?
Yep.
Did you pretend that you knew them? That's what I do. So it happened to me recently. I was in the grocery store. I saw this woman, you know, in the produce section, and I recognized her face. I thought, oh, I know that face. But I couldn't remember where I knew her from or her name. And then she comes up to me and she's like, hi, Danielle. And I'm like, hi. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I sat up in bed and went, Geraldine. Like it came to me. And then I realized I knew her because her son and my son, when they were 10, played baseball together. My son's now 23. So I hadn't seen this woman in a really long time, and seeing her in a place that wasn't a baseball field, it just didn't click, right? Okay, so that would be a normal part of aging, okay? But if I don't recognize my children, if I don't recognize my family members, and I've known them my whole life, that's not a normal part of aging, okay? So those are some differences in what we mean by memory impairment, okay? So when we're talking Alzheimer's, we don't mean a little bit of memory loss, like forgetting little things. We mean big things, okay? Okay, difficulty performing familiar tasks. Okay, so a normal part of aging is that your brain processing speed, it slows as we get older, okay? Just like everything else slows down, so does that, okay? So, for example, maybe you're cooking and you're going to make a recipe that you've never made before. Maybe when you were in your 20s, your 30s, you could read the recipe and then just go do it. Not now. Now you read the first 3 steps, come back, read the next 3 steps, right? That's okay. That's a normal part of aging, okay? But if you've been making eggs for, I don't know, 30, 40 years now, a couple times a week, and you go to make those eggs, and you can't remember how to do it, that is not a normal part of aging, okay? It might take you a little longer to get dressed. It might take you a little longer to do things. You might just be a little slower, right? That's a normal part of aging. But if you come out of the bedroom or the bathroom and your underwear are on top of your pants, right? That would not be a normal part of aging. That means the brain is having more difficulty than it should from just an aging process, okay? Problems with language, okay. So as I said, that processing speed changes in the brain. So what could happen is that your word finding may be a little slower. So you got the word on the tip of your tongue. Anybody experience that? The word's on the tip of your tongue, but it's not coming, right? Okay. And then when you get calm about it, it comes, right? So that's kind of a normal part of aging. But if weird things start to happen, like you say to somebody, pass me the water bottle. So they pick up the water bottle and they go to pass it to you, and you go, no, the water bottle. And they go, yeah. And you go, and they say, no, and then they point to something else. So what's happened is the word they were thinking in their brain is not the words that are now coming out of their mouth, okay? That's a brain problem, and it's not normal, okay? Substituting words for other words, or what I call a word salad, can start to happen with dementia. So what happens is, I'll give you an example of my coworker Jessica. She has a grandmother with Alzheimer's, And her grandmother used to say to her, when she used to look after her when she was a little girl, her grandmother would say, do you feel bad, sick, or yucky? Right, when she didn't feel well. And now her grandmother says, do you feel bunky? And that is bad, sick, and yucky made into one word, okay? Now she does have Alzheimer's disease. So that's not a normal part of aging, that language change, okay? If someone asks you a question in your first language and you answer in your first language, it's very normal. Someone asks you a question in English and you speak English and you answer in English, that's a very normal thing. But if someone asks you a question in one language and you answer in another, right? That wouldn't be a normal part of aging, right? Because your brain, when it's functioning well, knows the difference between the two languages, okay? If you're speaking to someone who speaks multiple languages, you all might kind of mix it up a bit, and that's okay. But this is when you actually don't understand